strategically work in Nepal, invest in Nepal. Having said that, let me just share a few words about a few areas about ADB's opinions. What's the priorities to speed up the investment in Nepal? I think some areas our experience is quite meaningful there, so I'd like to take this opportunity to share with the audience. First of all, building a robust and inclusive federal system. I think this is very, very important to fully unleash the potential of the federal system, clarity in mandates and responsibility of different layers of governments. So now the target is implementation of the three tiers. I think it's very, very much important. More resources for sustainable governments to performance, reforms of state enterprises, state-owned enterprises, enhancement of the government agency capacity, and also coordination among those different levels of governments would be very, very much important, and also rely on the national plans. So all, I think, are required. In a to-do list, I would like to highlight the importance of the very solid, should have a very solid budget process. So Nepal can further strengthen the linkage between the national plans and also the midterm expenditure framework and also annual budget, I think, which is also very important to enable more long-term capital expenditure in the budget, in the different level of budget. So government's capital investment should be the very important core to enable all the others to participate. Secondly, engage development partners to support Nepal's ambitions of achieving the SDGs and becoming a prosperous country. It will be needed support from development partners and forge greater partnership with the private sector. So even countries that have already developed in Asia and this region and the Pacific region made a very good use of the development assistance in a very early stage. I would like to emphasize a very early stage. So that's kind of important things. With continuing reforms, there are scope of leverage more financial resources, technical know-how, and the knowledge based on international experiences. Thirdly, fostering private sector development. In Nepal, recent improvements in the economic and the reform initiatives signal actually progress in enabling environment for private sector development. Greater private sector participation is essential to mobilize resources, introduce innovation and technology, bring better management, and most importantly, to ensure sustainable development. Fourth, promoting regional cooperation and integration. So Nepal is situated between the two larger and faster growing economies, namely India and China. But Nepal is in the location of landlocked. But I think Nepal can make itself a land-linked country by enhancing the transport connectivity, developing regional energy markets, promoting tourism industry, and also implementing the trade facilitation measures. So a number of regional forums, such as SASIC, SAARC, BIMSTEC, BRI, so we can name that. All the Nepal is critical stakeholders there, and can be used to integrate the Nepal's economic into the regional and the global supply chain. So I think this is also something there. Last but not the least, improving the project preparation and the implementation. So this is a lot of our kind of daily working with the Nepal. Something here, I think also there are some room to improve. So it is encouraging to note that the government has taken bold legal and regulatory reforms to promote investment, such as the recent enacted PPP and Investment Act. So some act has been erected, and also like Foreign Investment Act. So I had a meeting with the government. Is that last year 100, since more than that, it's working on that. So it's really encouraging, I think. However, but lack of the investment-ready projects still remain one kind of key challenges for us to invest, to do better in Nepal. So this is also, I think, some kind of a reason behind that of like low capital investment. So some reason of that. So we need to also hope for the improve. On the project implementation, we highly commended the government's initiatives to fast track of execution of national priority projects. Ensuring timelessly efficiency and quality in project implementation remains a challenge in Nepal. So we hope such efforts can be fully integrated into government's public management system and build the confidence for the investors. So ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would like to reiterate that this is an optimum momentum for Nepal to focus on speed up economic development. Nepal has a larger investment needs to develop itself into a middle-income country and also to achieve the SDGs by 2030 to fulfill its ambitious target of becoming the prosperous country in 2043. This is also, I think, an opportune moment for investors and development partners to contribute good ideas of how to promote investment in Nepal. So having said that, I look forward to hearing from our panelists and also audience their experiences and the thoughts about investing in Nepal. I think all of us can benefit from today's discussions. With that, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chen, for your detailed address in the areas of involvement of ADB in Nepal, the prerequisites for sustainable development in Nepal, and your suggestions on how it can be better. So, thanking our special guest for his address, I would now like to hand over the proceedings of this session to our moderator, Mr. Anuj Agrawal.
Thank you, Sudiksha. A hearty good morning to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for setting the stage a bit and sharing your ideas on Nepal's progress. I'd like to recognize all dignitaries, government leaders, members on the dais, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to this session on sharing of experiences and aspirations of investing in Nepal. Both as chairman of Nepal Infrastructure Bank and as vice president of CNI, I want to do a very special warm welcome to all our foreign investors who've come across to Nepal. And hopefully in this session, we'd like to share a story, a story about what we're doing in Nepal, how FDI is performing in Nepal. And I'm, looking forward to sharing this story with you guys and engaging with that in the coming sessions. So let me start with setting the context a bit. I think FDI, to us, FDI investment in Nepal is one of South Asia's best kept secrets, right? And today we want to spill that secret. On one hand, if you look at the track record of FDI in Nepal, 30 years, the top 20 investments, agnostic of any sector, we're not picking any sector, financial, FMCG, steel, cement, the returns are astronomical. So returns over 15, 20, 30 years, the annual returns in Nepal for FDI sector, agnostic of any particular investment, is 30, 40% annualized, which means over 20, 30 years, returns of 10,000% are the norm, not the exception. Just to give you an example, when I was driving over this morning, I looked up 2 life insurance companies who started business in Nepal about 2000, so about 18, 19 years ago. They both invested about $2 million in the country, right? So about $2.2 million. One of those companies now is worth $200 million and gives an annual dividend payout of $5 million. The other one is worth $400 million and is annually paying out $10, $15 million. So on average, a $2 million investment in the life insurance sector 20 years ago is now worth $300 million, an annual dividend payout of $10 to $15 million. Now that's not just the life insurance sector. Cutting across all sectors, if you ask any foreign investor in the last 20 years, that's the story for everybody. And we have some of those investors on stage today, and hopefully you'll hear from them. But the kind of returns we see in Nepal are astronomical, and they cut across all sectors. We're not aware of any single large foreign investment in Nepal which has not succeeded. Now you find a country globally which can show that kind of track record, and it'll be very hard to find. And that's a story we find that in Nepal, unfortunately, due to media or due to us not being able to share those facts and figures, that's a story which really is not known by investors globally. And hopefully in this session today, we'll try and bring out that story and share real hard data on what's happened with FDI in the past. Coming back to Nepal, and we've heard over the last day and during the course of today, that Nepal offers unique advantages. I mean, we've got our locational advantage between two big economies. We've got a very sizable population, especially when we come from India or China and we're a little bit placed in between. People look at Nepal and often think of Nepal as a small country. But the reality is we're among the top 50 countries in the world in terms of population, with the same size as Malaysia or Canada. And our youth demographic is very strong, which means consumption, demand, productivity will remain strong for the decades to come. Now that kind of unique demographic is pretty sizable on a global scale. From that perspective, we have very strong competitive advantages in many sectors. So hydro, tourism, agriculture, those are well-known sectors. From a domestic demand standpoint, education, health, even domestic consumed goods, FMCG products, we've seen phenomenal growth across the years. For last 30 years, most companies who are producing locally have experienced double-digit growth year on year for the last 30 years. Companies have grown 100 times, 200 times over the last 15, 20 years in terms of local growth. Now that's another number that's hard to match somewhere else. As foreign investors, we often worry about things like, will I be able to repatriate? What is the track record on repatriation? Again, we've got more than 30 years of data to show that we have an impeccable track record of repatriation. And again, I'm looking forward to talking to some of our speakers on the dais and hearing from their experiences. And when we have global companies, and I'll take examples of SCB and Unilever who are here on stage, this idea that, in an LDC, you'll have to worry about corruption, the government does not work, the regulators do not work. Those are all myths that we'll try to get past today, because the reality is when companies like Standard Chartered and Unilever are in Nepal, here to stay, and actually looking to accelerate from what I picked up, and we'll hear from them, that only happens when the environment works, when the system works, when we have a government and a regulatory framework which is conducive to investment. That's the proof of the pudding, when investors who are here are looking to grow and accelerate. So I think for us in Nepal and for the private sector and the government, I think one of our big gaps historically has been sharing this story. I don't think this story, we've done a good job of sharing data, and I hope this summit is a great start in that direction. And I think the private sector now needs to take over from the government a little bit and really go out and start sharing real experiences. And of course, our brand ambassadors, the companies who've already been in Nepal, I think they are the best people to tell the story. And today we'll try and correct this whole impression and start moving forward. So with all of this, I think we have a great panel of speakers for this session today. We've got some international investors. We've got a prominent Nepalese investor who's got great global exposure, who's now come back home to Nepal and is doing some great investments here. We've got the presidents of our two leading chambers on the dais. So the stage is set to have a very meaningful and a value-additive session. We'd like to chat, debate, argue if needed. Let's be honest, I think the audience is looking for the honest truth. We don't need to be politically correct here. Let's give the audience what they want. And I'll start the session and let's get this going. So let me start with Ms. Rana, who is the president of our leading chamber of commerce, FNCCI. So Ms. Rana, you as the president of FNCCI, you have almost a unique insight in interacting both with investors, existing and prospective. You're also interacting with the government. You're interacting with the domestic sector. And I wanted to understand, I'll ask you two questions and then I'll let you take over from there. What are the major insights that you've collected? What's working in Nepal? What could we do better? And how can chambers like FNCCI play a bigger role in sharing the success stories of Nepal? As we set the context, we know sharing stories is a big part of what we need to do. So maybe you can share some light on what you guys are doing, what you're learning, and how you can do more of that.
Thank you, Anushji. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, I think Nepal is the best place in the globe to invest, especially talking about the private sector perspective from the Federation of Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, like which is the apex body of the private sector also, and we have network not only within Nepal, but we have network outside all around the world with the chambers also and with the private sector. So I think this is the right time now, because now we have a stable government, which is our biggest asset. And another thing, like when we used to go and interact with our delegates, private sector, outside Nepal, like they would question us, like what is the political situation, how's the energy supply, what is the labor, situation there, what is the policies. And I think after a long, almost for 2 decades, the private sector of Nepal, they were having a lot of challenges. But now we have a stable government, and the government is only gearing up for economic prosperity. Their main agenda, main vision is how to do economic development in the country. So I think now even Nepal has gone into federalism. Just before me, the keynote speaker from the ADP, he also mentioned that we have 3 layers of government, especially the federal government. We have 7 states, and there are a lot of things to offer from the local government, from the federal government also. So Nepal being a developing country or underdeveloped country, I think we have tremendous opportunities also. Because if you go to developed country, like there's no, you see hardly any opportunities. So I think there are a lot of opportunities in different sectors, like talking about government is coming up with big mega project on infrastructures, a railway network, a roadway network, and also international airport also, and big hydros also, and IT sector also. So I think politically, if you say it's a right time to invest. And we have another plus point. What we have is we have a young human capital. When a lot of countries are facing the grey economy, I think we have youth to be involved in development also. And Nepal has a very rich biocity. We have like high altitude to the Tarai region, where it's almost like a sea level. So we have all kind of vegetable, agro-product, medical herbs, everything all over the season also. And of course, it's situated between 2 largest economy, India and China. And we have a special trade agreement with India also. Like the production which is done in Nepal, we have 0 tariff to send it to India. And even China has offered almost 88,000 product as a 0 tariff. So I think we have advantage for a bigger market also. And if you talk about tourism destination, I think we have one of the best tourism destination, the birthplace of Buddha, and religious tourism. The high altitude offers flora, fauna also, a lot of culture, diversity also, jungle safari, and a lot of things in tourism sector also. And another thing, policies. I think yesterday the Prime Minister and even the Finance Minister mentioned that a lot of policies has been amended now, and especially the foreign direct investment policy, public-private like partnership policies, and even the investment board. They are gearing up for one window system. So we don't have to go to different ministries and all. So a lot of projects will be addressed in investment board, and some of the project will be addressed at the related ministries also. And if we compare, and I think there's a lot of multinational companies from the financial sector, Standard Chartered Bank, and even manufacturing sector from Unilever, they are here. Of course, they are going to share the experience. When we see the different sectors of multinational companies, from manufacturing to finance, from telecom to other sectors, I think they are really making the profit. Even during when we have a political disturbance in the country, those time also they were making profit. Then you can imagine when the situation is so good in Nepal, you know. So I think this is the right time, and being a federation, being the part of the private sector of Nepal, which I think we are working very closely with the government. We represent almost all the committees of the government also, and having a very good network with all the chambers around the world, we can put a word to them. We organize B2B meetings, seminars, and discussion also. And a very strong point what we have is we lobby the government, because especially on the policy reform, because before doing this investment summit also, Honorable Finance Minister, who is the coordinator of this summit also, so we, the private sector, are also partner in this summit. So what we suggested is like this summit should offer the investors something new, you know. So maybe we have to reform the policies what are hindering the investors to come and invest, especially on FDI, PPP partnership policy, one window policy. So we have to offer them special things rather than what we offered in last investment summit, you know. So these are the things what we could really do from the private sector also. And once again, I would like to tell all the investors from the globe that this is the right time to invest in Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavani. That was very insightful. I'd like to now move over to Dr. Mahato. Dr. Mahato, we are immensely proud of your global achievements. I think every Nepali, aspires to be another Dr. Mahato, right? So that's, you've set the stage. I wanted to see if you could share two perspectives. One is you've obviously invested around the world, and you're able to compare policies, procedures, attractiveness of investment in various countries, and you've obviously come back and invested in Nepal. If you to contrast the two, so that's the first kind of area I would like you to touch on. And the other thing, as Bhavani ji was saying, and we've been hearing on about the competitive advantage of Nepal, competitive areas of investment, if you could share your idea on what are the few sectors that you think are very attractive and how we can attract investment in that area.
Dear Chair and dear friends, as Bhavani Rana and all participants in the summit already told that there are many opportunities in Nepal. So I am not going to talk about the opportunities, but I have some requests. It is said that only there is no problem and the best place in the world where you are not there. If you are there, if you are working there, if you are living there, you will have small problems every day, every hour, every moment. So please don't leave it, solve it, but don't talk too much about the problems. Second thing that I would like to especially to encourage our new investors, to our local investors and foreign investors who has done pretty much investment in Nepal, please do share your success publicly. What is happening now, we are talking very loudly about all the problems publicly, but our own success we are not talking. So please now from today take oath that we will talk about our success loudly and publicly. About our problem we will talk privately, because in Nepal our politicians, our leaders, our ministers, our bureaucrats, they are very accessible. You can go to anyone at office, in house or restaurants and you can talk about your own problem. The advice for new investors, please come to Nepal. This is the right place. You will have better opportunity for low cost. After 1-2 years, you will pay much more and you will not get this opportunity. I have been investing in many countries and especially in difficult countries like many countries of the Africa, Asia. But one thing I can proudly and confidently tell you that Nepal is one of the best and safest place for the investment. And this time will not remain for long. Please, for the new investors. Why we are talking many things with the problems, because we are afraid to invite new investors because we don't want to competition. So please come on time, do your investment, and after 3-4 years, you will have so big chance to get dividend after selling of your assets or equity to get profit, because Nepal is one of the largest profit earning place. You can't find anywhere, and there is no any problem of the repatriation, this, that. This is only talks. Not a single company can say that in Nepal I have done all conditions fulfilled, but I didn't get my money back. Nobody can say. I am challenging. But Being a Nepali citizen, I have bank accounts in many countries also, but I am feeling most problem in developed country to transfer money from one bank to another bank. And you have to fulfill all compliance. Then why you are not fulfilling your compliance in Nepal? So all friends, especially from the development banks, development partners, international investors, please do talk about Nepal, the good things, and all these problems are not problem of the country, problem of the certain companies, certain people, certain investors only, if you are not fulfilling compliance. If you are fulfilling compliance, only one country in the world I have seen who is guaranteeing the payment of suppliers. I can't take any goods in Nepal without opening the LC. Not a single country in the world you can find that type of the country who is giving the guarantee of the suppliers. Not a single country in the world you can find as a Nepal that we have never any default of the payment to the foreign supplier, foreign companies. And any debt, we have not any bad debt in our country. And only one country in the world where development budgets are not fully utilized. So we have money a lot in central bank, in all banks. So please come to Nepal, make investment, you will be happy and we will have the time to share success each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. That was very inspiring, and really we look forward to you hearing more from you, in days to come and sharing your story. So let me jump over to hearing from the horse's mouth. Let me get to Niruk ji, Mr. Niruk. Stand chart is probably the oldest, and we're just chatting about it before entering the session. It's probably the oldest foreign investor in Nepal, right? So they've been here, I think, 33 years, if I remember correctly. So Niruk, we hear many myths that go around. Nepal is a corrupt country, you need to do corruption, growth is slow, regulatory challenges, etc., etc. All these stories that go around. Stand chart obviously has been at the helm. You've been here 33 years. You've also observed the economy from a banker's perspective. You obviously got international exposure. So 2 or 3 aspects if I'd like you to share. One is what's been your experience, regulators, with the government, how are you guys operating? Generally, if you compare the Nepal franchise with other similar economies, how do you see that stacking up just from a competitive basis? Obviously, some idea of financially how this franchise has performed for you. So let's hear it from the investor on ground, and audience can hear directly from you.
Anuj, thank you. Following that passionate speech from Dr. Mahato, which I fully buy, it's a tough act. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being patient listeners. We'll try and hopefully give you some value for being as patient. Anuj, I fully would like to start with saying that we've been here 33 years,
right,
and we've never really had a problem.
Okay.
We have never had a problem paying dividend. We have done a further public offering very recently, about 18 months ago. We never had a problem getting that done. 30% of our stock is held, broadly 30% of our stock is held locally. We've got a broad base of shareholders of approximately 140,000 shareholders in the country. And our reason to exist in Nepal is really 2 things. One is to provide the international connectivity both ways into Nepal. And today, without naming any clients, we have 13 of our key global clients here in the audience who are here at our invitation, and I hope they'll find that the time spent in Nepal will really give them some value and deep insight, because there's been such an open amount of sharing from such senior policymakers and business leaders from Nepal that I think it gives foreign investors a lot of insight. So just to reiterate, 33 years in Nepal, we've never had a problem with either a regulator, the finance ministry, for the public offering, repatriation of dividends. So it should be a straightforward endorsement to what Dr. Mahato mentioned. One of the other issues which is really heartening in Nepal as a foreign investor is there's a great two-way dialogue between policymakers and international investors. They're easily accessible. Again, to Dr. Mahato's point, they're easily accessible. They are supportive. They try and understand the issues that we feel. Now, we have very stringent compliance standards globally. Yet we've been able to operate highly successfully in Nepal, which reflects the fact that foreign direct investors can navigate Nepal successfully, and the whole story of everything is corrupt and everything is Ranujas, it frankly doesn't bite. We've operated successfully. We have the same global standards for opening a bank account, whether in Nepal or anywhere else in the world, and we have a lot. And we have a lot of bank accounts. Not enough, but a lot. So just to reiterate that aspect, about a year ago, Standard Chartered was really involved in supporting the government to try and drive some foreign direct investment into Nepal when we did the blended finance conference jointly with the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank. And we brought together a group of private investors, multilaterals, and had a discussion. And I think this summit is really heartening for me personally to see that sort of initial session at the blended finance, which was a focused session of multilaterals, private investors, and some big, large insurance money globally, has led to a much broader investment conference. And the one thing that I will leave Nepal with this time, more than any other time, is I've noticed that Nepal is now really beginning to digitize. With digitization comes the power to unleash the Nepalese economy. It allows you to empower 30 million people, warm, friendly, high energy people, to really live to their full potential. And I think the real focus on infrastructure development needs to start with a really aggressive look at how you roll out a broad access to the digital economy for every Nepali. And I am really heartened to see some of the platforms, some of the sort of conversations I've had on the sidelines of this summit. We ourselves are a pretty strong digital bank globally, and I can tell you that we were waiting to see the digital architecture come through before we start on our bringing in really strong digital products across this market. And after this visit, I'm absolutely convinced that now is the time. So I hope I try to clear up any doubts about Standard Chartered's commitment to Nepal and the fact that we have, our home is everywhere. And we no longer believe that we are a foreign investor. We believe we are Nepali too. So with that, I'd like to pass it on and say that, look, it's a great place to invest. It's all the stories that you hear, even in private, which Dr. Mahato might tell you in private are not true. It's actually a great place to invest. Thank you.
Thank you, Niruk. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard directly from somebody who's been here 33 years. He's on the record. We've got TV recordings, etc. of him. So, he can't back out from that. He's talked about how successful he's been in Nepal. He's talked about how they've had no issues. And honestly, these are the people who are telling the true story, right? I mean, there's nothing to hide. They're being frank and they're sharing reality. So, on that note, I'd like to jump to the other long investor we've had here, Unilever. I think they celebrated 25 years recently. And Ashish, I think Unilever is our country's flagship FDI, right? So every conversation that we have, we really take Unilever as an example, and we share the, the great success story that you guys had. I don't have the exact data, but I know typical dividends are 1,000, 1,200%, and one of my great regrets is not having bought your shares early on, right? So, I'll go to my grave with that regret. But I wanted to, get a slight perspective from you on a couple of things. One is, Unilever's had a great 25, 27 years now. I know your global chairman actually was here a couple of years ago as well. Future-wise, where do you see Unilever going? We've obviously got a lot of policy changes which have happened recently. Where do you see Nepal strategically working for you? And, tell us the Unilever story. What worked? What's been the experience? You guys have obviously been repatriating dividends consistently. Overall, just taking over from where Niruk left off. Share your story. Be absolutely honest, and let's hear from you.
Thanks, Anuj. I think I want to set the stage with two things actually. We as Unilever believe, whichever country we work in, what is good for Nepal is good for Unilever. And it goes very closely with the government's mission of prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. And I think if you set your objective right, then I think decisions become easier. Because I think if we are doing something which is not good for Nepal, obviously it cannot be good for Unilever. Second is, we are the #1 rated employer of choice by the graduating students of Nepal. We think it's an honor, at the same time it's a responsibility. We recruit from the best management institutes in 54 countries. And let me be upfront and say that the youngsters who are graduating out of the Nepal universities are amongst the best. And I think it is our responsibility to give them the exposure and the grooming where they can become flag bearers and drive prosperity in the country here. I think in the last 27 years that we have been here, I will be lying if I say that we didn't have problems, because the country had problems. And if the country has problems, from 10% manufacturing contribution, it went down to 4.5% because of the social struggle, the political struggle we have had. We stayed put because we had invested in the long term, and it was the safety and security of our people and our facilities which was of importance then. And I think now that there is a stable government, we feel that this is the time where Nepal will take the leap. Why do we say that? Nowhere in South Asia do you have a country where the median age is 22 years. The 22 years of median age, 65% of the population in the working class between 18 to 65. I think the challenge is the flight of youngsters to other countries to find employment. And my heart goes out to the families where they have the young men, Yesterday I was coming back from Singapore, and there was a father who was crying when he met his daughter. Sure. And it is very touching to see that. And I think the responsibility of companies like us is to generate employment, because why should a young man go out to find employment? But that we can do as a company by making sure that we grow with the country. The GDP growth is 6.5%. I don't think many countries would be proud of saying a 6.5% GDP growth, when we know that there are still a lot of sectors where you don't have reliable secondary information available. And when you have an economy like this, I think what is important for a company like Unilever is to make sure that as people get prosperity, they get more money, we give them the offerings which are available in the nearby markets like China or India. But I think what is important for the country to realize is your own potential and your own place in the world. And I think what I agree with the speakers before me is that never have we approached the government and they have turned us down. And I think that's a sign of humility, because all countries make mistakes, all countries have problems. But if you are ready to work with the industry directly to solve those problems, I'm sure we'll together solve it. We have invested significantly last year in putting up a new ERP. We implemented SAP. We have implemented our best-in-class distributor system. We have invested around 32 crores in our CAPEX expansion, and we will continue to do that. My only request to the people, the government and the industry bodies is, give us stability and give us breathing space. Lead everything else to perfect competition, and we will be in a better place.
Thank you, Ashish. So, to all our prospective investors, I'd encourage you to download Unilever's balance sheet, because that's going to make you envious of the kind of returns they're generating here. But thank you, Ashish. Thank you for that positive comment. And honestly, I think as investors, what we sometimes overlook is the agility and ease of access we have. If you want to meet the responsible government functionary, it could be a secretary, it could be a minister, it could be a DG, or even the prime minister. What we've always found is if you have the right request, you have the right data, and it makes economic sense, the speed at which the government moves is phenomenal. And I don't know about many other countries which can make that kind of claim. You can get things done very quickly if you share the right data, right structure, and that I think is what we've heard from our investors. And these are investors who've been here 27 years, 33 years, consistently. They've seen many governments come and go, they've seen political changes, they've seen everything, but what's remained consistent in Nepal is the fact that the government's been very positive, they've always been supportive, and the ability to get things done here is second to none, right? So that's what we've heard. So let me move to a younger investor, if I may use the right word, one of probably the single largest investment that we have in the country to date. And we have the chairman of SJVN, Mr. Nandalan Sharma with us. So Mr. Sharma, obviously there are a couple of unique insights that you bring. One is you're bringing a pretty sizable project. I'm not sure of the exact size, but I'm sure it's a multi-billion-dollar project that's coming on board. Number two, it's our flagship area, right? So the hydropower sector, we've heard consistently since yesterday, is probably our #1 sector at the moment, the biggest competitive advantage we have. It's the biggest area we're looking to attract FDI. And I'd like to hear from you your thoughts. Obviously I guess this is your first foray into Nepal. What is your experience so far? What are you looking at? And even your thoughts on the sector overall hydro. How can we really get the FDI? The Prime Minister went on record to say 3,000 megawatts, 5,000 megawatts in 5 years, 15,000 in 10 years. We need to get there, and we need people like you to really drive that vision. So let's hear from you on this sector and your experiences here.
Thank you, Anas. Nature has bestowed on Nepal the bounty of very beautiful places, mountains, rivers, and hardworking people. India has been cooperating and associating with Nepal with its development since long. And we are a public sector company in India, Satluj Jal Vidyut Nigam Limited. We are basically in the hydropower sector. Now we have diversified into all sectors of energy, whether it's hydro, wind, solar, thermal, transmission, all sectors of energy. Any investor like us is guided by primarily 2 R's. First is return. Whatever investment an investor is going to make, what is the weighting for returns, how much returns investor is going to get from his investment. And second is a risk or the uncertainties associated with the investment in any foreign country. Like returns, in hydro sector, the projects have very long gestation period. The returns come after say 15 or 20 years. I am investing in Nepal for the last 10 years. We were allotted this around 900 megawatt project in 2008. After doing all the due diligence, survey investigation, preparation of DPR, then project development agreement was signed, and finally the project was started, construction was started last year in 2018. I am investing here for the last 10 years. So far I have invested about 800 crore rupees. But I will get returns say after 5 or 6 years, say total after 15 years. So far I have contributed directly to the exchequer of the government of Nepal more than 100 crore rupees. And in the days to come I will make an investment of 11,000 crore rupees in the next 4-5 years. But I will get a returns after say 5 or 6 years. The investment which we are going to make, as an investor we do lot of analysis. The risk involved with the investment in any other land just we experienced during the past 10 years. Now the project has started, but when the construction work on the project started, we experience number of problems like the import of material, manpower, equipment for the construction of the project. Nepal is a virgin territory, virgin country so far as the development of hydropower is concerned. There is a potential of over 80,000 megawatt, but so far less than 1,000 megawatt has been harnessed. So this hydropower development offers a lot of opportunities, investment opportunities in Nepal. But what is required for the investment? Ease of doing business. Investment friendly laws should be there. So far, what we experience, we have experience of constructing mega projects in India, but these systems are well established. There is no problem like that import of machinery, manpower or equipment for skilled manpower for the construction of project. What in Nepal we are facing these difficulties. What is the positive or good news is that the Nepal government has been very, very positive in responding to our problems. When we raise problems with the government of Nepal, even the issues which are required to be decided by the cabinet, they were taken up in the cabinet and decided promptly. But lot of more things are still required to be done so that the activities for the construction of hydro projects are fastened. This I was just looking at the figures of per capita income of Nepal. It is around 1 lakh per capita per year. I was just doing the mathematics, simple arithmetic. Even if the half of the hydropower is developed in next 10 to 15 years, per capita income of Nepal can be multiplied by 3 or 4 times. It can be more than 4 lakh per capita per year, simply if half of the hydropower is harnessed in the next 10 to 15 years. And this is not a big or difficult task. If the government adopts the approach of developing a hydropower project in integrated manner. So just the government is doing this, developing the project or allocating the project, one here, another here, some third project in other basin. Government should come out with the integrated development of the river basins. If hydropower is developed in a integrated river basin approach, all the infrastructure facilities can be developed in the same river basin and that can be shared by the developers. And I offer from the Government of India side that we have very rich experience of construction of hydro projects. Even we have constructed, SJBN has constructed the largest hydropower of the country, 1500 megawatt, run of the river project. And same terrain exists here in Nepal. So if Government of Nepal offers, we are ready to give our services to develop a program or plan for the development of the river basin approach so far as the hydropower is concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I think that was quite enlightening, and I think I take away from the fact that even if we develop half of our, and there's no if, I think the Prime Minister went up here, he spoke. There's no doubt that we will develop hydropower, and therefore I think we are going to see a huge spurt in our per capita income. And we appreciate your offer, and I'm sure that our government representatives here will work on that to help us plan the river basins and other parts of the hydropower growth.
Thank you.
So let me come to Mr. Hari Bhakta Sharma, President of CNI. Hariji, you are one of Nepal's leading economic intellectuals of our generation, right? So with over 20 years of economic lobbying leadership, you've contributed a great part of your life to driving the economy. And I wanted to pick your brain on a couple of things, right? So, typically as the private sector, I grew up, or when I entered the private sector, we ended up blaming the government for a lot of things, right? I mean, that was the general go-to. The government doesn't do this, the government does not do that. But guess what? The government has now, especially in the last 2-3 months, they have enacted great legislation. They've moved fast. They've done the NIS 2019. The government, I think, today is moving very fast. They're delivering what they need to do. And the private sector now needs to do its part, right? So what's your thought on how the private sector, and I'll ask you a couple of questions and then you can address them together. Really, how do we now take it forward from here, and instead of kind of putting the blame on the government really move forward from here? So that's one of the questions. And number two, when you look at chambers like CNI, FNCCI, how can we add meaningful value to the growth story of Nepal? Right? I think we've done a lot, but is there more we can do? Is, we have again members of the government here. How can we work cohesively so that we can attract FDI and really drive the economic growth of Nepal? So on those two areas and anything beyond that, please share your thoughts.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think the previous speakers have already given you a lot of details, why you should invest in Nepal, what problems, what opportunities are there. So as a president of CNI, Anuj and I work together. As you see that we have had many common similarities, and we discussed quite a lot about the opportunities in the country, the challenges that we face. Dr. Mahatto is here. I will share you a very interesting data about my colleague who is on the left of this hall, Mr. Ashish, his company. Last trading day was Thursday, day before yesterday. His company traded about 9,300 in the market, and there are buyers, there are no sellers. A company which is a manufacturing company established about 27 years ago. Probably they started their production 26 years ago, had brought a couple of products when they started the business. And if you see into arithmetics, how much is that? 18,300% of appreciation in 27 years time. 18,300% of the market cap. And last year they distributed dividend of roughly about 700%. At good times they used to distribute 1,400, 1,300% dividend per year. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are an investor from other parts of the world, these are the stories. Ask my company. I produce pharmaceutical products. It's a very competitive business. We have a very open economic policy in Nepal. We allow import at a very low import duties because we are an export country to import. So you will not find any country parallel to Nepal where the import policies are like that. Very simplified, protecting international suppliers. Whether the importers face problem is a second issue for our government. They want to protect Nepal's credibility. So all sellers to our country are really protected, which Dr. Mahatto was telling. It is the only example in the world. So if you invest in Nepal, the rate of return in your investments are far, far better. Of course, I'll not say Nepal is a very big market. It's a mid-sized country. The per capita is still very poor. We need to work very hard. So for any investor, whether you are my colleagues from Nepal or from any international market, you may not like it, but the fact is that the investment wagon, I would also rather say that you please fasten your seatbelt. Nepal's economy is going to take off. If you want to join us, this is the right time. The Right Honorable Prime Minister had given his time, his vision. What he said yesterday morning, if you recall, he said, we will protect your investment. We will give all the support that you deserve as an investor if you come to invest in Nepal. If you come 2 years later, probably you will not listen the same voice from him. It would be a different story because our colleagues in the private sector are investing very rapidly in different sectors. Today, if you see in our product list in Nepal, what God has given, I don't want to explain because you all know it. It is available in Google, you all know it. Before you come to Kathmandu, you must have Googled everything. What is there, what type of mountains we have, what type of good quality water our rivers are there. You must have understood about that. But I would rather say for all of you that investing in Nepal today is probably the best time to come and invest, join hands together with Nepalese counterparts. I have been very minutely evaluating, analyzing data of our foreign investors in Nepal. And any foreign company who invested in Nepal as their local joint venture partners from Nepal had always been successful. No one failed. The only one company failed that came 100%. They didn't realize what are the challenges in local markets, so they failed. They have to wrap up and go in a very difficult time of Nepal. But the rest of the companies, they had always been very happy making money. They complain about problems, but they had never explained how many of them are making the profit in Nepal. The rate of profitability is very, very high. You will be surprised. Some of the private companies who are not listed, they are better than what I have also just explained about Unilever's story. One small investment of a technology company from Scandinavia, 10 years ago, they invested about $800,000, less than $1 million. After 8 years, they sold their stake at $1.5 billion. Even Facebook do not have that type of profit in the world. $800,000 invested in a poor country like Nepal, and 8 years after, that particular stock was sold at a cost of about $1.5 billion. How much profit you expect in a country like this? If you have right strategy, if you have right intent and a product, then the rate of returns in Nepal are far better. Working in Nepal is very good. I meet a lot of diplomatic mission people, people from different institutions who come to Kathmandu. When they go back, they say that I have a disease in Kathmandu, that is the weather. It is the most beautiful weather. I visit about 50 countries in the world. I had been to many countries. This is the only place in the world. You will not find another place. Give me an example if you have. This is the only place in the world where you can survive without a sweater and without air conditioning. You can survive, you can grow. If you go to Chicago, you will die without a sweater. You cannot survive there. If you don't have air conditioning, you cannot survive there. If you go to Delhi, it is difficult. You can survive, but it is very difficult, 45 plus. This is the only place in the world. So they enjoy the weather, they enjoy the hospitality, they enjoy the type of culture that Kathmandu offers and Nepal's many other cities offers to international investors. So I will not say that investors do come only to enjoy life, but ultimately that also counts. That also makes a lot of difference for international investors. So Anuj, my submission to international investors, Nepal is ready to welcome you. My suggestion is please join hands with some of our companies. You can come and contact us at CNI. We will be able to advise you who should be your people to work with you as your right joint venture partners in Nepal. You join with them. You take some of the projects which are being offered to you. These are very small numbers, only 77. If you contact private sector, you will find 300 more to invest. They are not offering everything on this particular investment summit. They are trying to understand that they want to invest themselves. And every company, believe me, every company, including mine, we are investing in expansion. My colleague on my left, Ashish, said we are investing about 320 million rupees for expansion of their capacities. Every company, one of my colleagues is here, they have invested for one of the largest manufacturing cement company in Nepal. $360 million in a manufacturing company invested in Nepal, and that project came into operation in 12 months' time. Hats off to you. 12 months, they are producing 6,000 metric ton of cement every day with one of the best technologies you can imagine in cement production. So what type of opportunities you are looking for? Nepal is a virgin market. In my opinion, you can invest in any sectors. Look into agriculture. If you believe me, 82% of any agricultural produce could be produced in Nepal. There are only a couple of things which you cannot produce in Nepal, whether it is high value crop, whether it is medicinal plants, whether it is any herbal product, or whether it is any stable food product, or any sweet fruit like mangoes or lychee or jackfruit, whatnot. You can produce everything in Nepal. So I see tremendous opportunities, whether in agriculture, whether in infrastructure, whether in manufacturing, whether in metallurgy, whether in education. 25 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, Nepal used to be the poorest producer of clinical professionals in the country. That means the doctors in different fields. Today, after 25 years of private sector engagement, Nepal produces highest number per capita of undergraduate, postgraduate doctors, nurses, paramedical workers, healthcare professionals. Highest not only in South Asia but the whole region per capita. And our doctors are not only giving services in Kathmandu, but they are working in downtown Boston, downtown New York, downtown London, downtown Tokyo. I would not name downtown Dubai. There are too many Nepalese working there. They are working, they are providing healthcare services everywhere in the world. Why? Because the private sector invested in Nepal, they developed a model. They developed a model where the private sector investment can produce better result. So if you have an idea in any business model, Nepal is the right place to test, to try, take advantage of very openness in the policy making. My colleagues had already said you can meet the Prime Minister, you can meet the President, even you can meet and present your problem to the Right Honorable President, Right Honorable Prime Minister of the country. Secretaries, ministers are here, you can meet them. You can tell them what you need, how they can help you to make your problem into a very smooth solution. So when I worked as a president of CNI, this is the only time I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very strong, stable government. It is happening after I was born. So nothing had happened after I was born. This is the first ever government with a clear-cut mandate and majority, and globally very interesting, voted a communist party by the people and with 2/3 majority in the government. So they have a very strong commitment to produce economic results. And if the Prime Minister comes to you, have a dinner together and invites you to invest a tiny about $100 million, I think what else you can expect? Your investment is guaranteed by his words yesterday morning. So I'm excited. If you have any projects in your mind, if you want to take some of the projects which is being offered today by the investment board and the private sector, you will not regret. Your investment will get better result. I know India and China are big countries, but they are very competitive. Very, very competitive and not easy to penetrate and invest there. But Nepal is not competitive. You will have advantage over your investment if you come with ideas, if you have an access to technology, if you have little bit desire of taking risk. Nepal probably is the best place to invest at present day. I don't know what will happen in future, because in future, as my colleague Dr. Mahato was saying, after 2-3 years, Dr. Mahato would be investing in 10 more adventures. And even my colleague on my right, Anuj, is taking ambitious projects. And so is the case with our bankers. So I'm sure Mr. Vice President from ADB, he will be investing more in Nepal. If you see the volume of investment going higher and higher. Thank you for that. So even SJB, why they are having little bit problem, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen. Because they are a government company from India. They don't have a private joint venture partner in Nepal. That's the reason they are having a little bit problem. Had it been a private sector partner for them, he would not have explained those problems. They would have already managed that. They would have managed all those problems. So I would still encourage you to have a small joint venture partner for your project. They will solve your problems. There are too many investors here. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is not only having been you here and discussing with you, but I meet a lot of other my colleagues from the universities, from different business sectors. Nepal had not learned how to make profit of the type of business environment Nepal is offering to international investors. We had not been able to market in the past. But this is the time we would be marketing. This is the time we will be very aggressive. This is the time we will also work together with the government to make sure that they give you right dose of motivation and right dose of benefit, but they do not succumb, because we in the private sector have understood it, and I would be very happy to support and take any questions, any queries, if you have any, so that we can give you further idea on why and what you should invest in Nepal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hari. So, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seat belts. The train is moving, and you better get a seat now because the seats won't be available for long, right? That's the message we get from there. Some great numbers, some great data that we heard from Hariji. We're a little short on time, so I think we're going to skip past the Q&A session, but I think all the speakers are going to be available post this session, and I hope some of you can interact with them. So at this point, I'd like to come back to our keynote speaker, Mr. Chen, and see, basis what he's heard from investors, from bankers, and get his kind of thoughts on the session overall. And hopefully some more new announcements from ADB about the big investments that they're going to do in coming years, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Before joining this panel, I think myself is very positive for the investment here, but heard about you, you are more positive than me. This is a great sense. I think maybe two things in my mind after carefully listening to you. First one from the feeling about the hospitality here. So this is something that yesterday I mentioned the logo, Nepal investment, and then just shooting up. So I said I really liked it. Here the forum is like mobilize the efforts, mobilize the brainstorm like today. But more sense to me is not only that. It's something like your hospitality, your willingness like to welcome investment here. So from the top leadership, from the government, a lot of the senior officials, and also from Nepal's people here. These days I just feel. So I think this is a kind of momentum, very, very important momentum. To encourage us to invest more here. Because I think the philosophy is that in a developing country, there will be huge kind of challenges. I'm Chinese, I know, experiences the challenges. 2000, China is at the same level, according to the per capita GDP, as now the Nepal is. So 20 years, it's about 20 years, the situation significantly changed. So I do think it's going to be changed. Yeah. So as you said, Nepal now is taking off. Yeah, it's taking off. It's really taking off. You can see if Nepal's per capita GDP across the $1,000 then you cannot be dragged it back. It's going to be very quick. So a lot of opportunities there, but the key is that no matter how big challenges here, with the people here, they want development. They want this country can be developed faster. And with the hospitality, I can tell from the hospitality. So I think for the investor, for the private sector, no kind of challenge can crack us down. Yeah, with that. So this is my first feeling. The second one, as MDB, the ADB, together with others like World Bank and other like now newly the AIB and also others development partners, we've been working here for a very long time. We invest a lot. As you mentioned, we just increased 2010 to 2014. The annual average is about 250 million, but now it's about ADB is about 600 million. So it's like a double. So it's going to be increased. But the key is that we invested on roads, we invested on the energy, and also invested on schools. So I just tried to take my notebook. The day before yesterday, I visited the earthquake affected school called Sanju Niwa in the Dulikhel, that one. Yeah, I do see a lot of kids there. They study there, so very younger generation. My idea is that we invested on infrastructure, energy, school, and TWET, training a lot of people here. But what's the value there? So this is, I think, so we need the private investment. So we need you come to use those kind of routes. You use the energies we work together to generate them. Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister yesterday mentioned currently roughly it's about 1 gigawatts here. And next year will be 2, 3 years will be, in 3 years will be 3 gigawatts. In 10 years will be 10 gigawatts. So this is all the efforts we are here trying to do that. But some maybe in the future will export it to the outside. But I do hope all the energy generated can be utilized by ourselves domestically. So can be utilized by the private investment. So this is a foundation. This is the value, the meaning as the development partner. So we work here. So with that, I do hope. I believe this is an excellent opportunity, like all the colleagues here are talking about, excellent opportunity for private sector to come in to invest here. Three quicker things. One, come early, or as early as possible. Second, aiming for the longer term. Yeah, the third, don't need to worry about too much challenges. During your investment, even challenges here, just get more talks with the government, more the federal and local governments, and work together to improve the ease in doing business here. Then will be paved for the way for the future, for the prosperity Nepal. Happy Nepali. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chen. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, we're getting to the last end of the session. I wish we had more time to go back to these speakers, but you know, I've been reminded that I need to complete on time. So I'll just try and sum up a few thoughts. And you know, one of the things I think from a technical perspective that I would like to share is that from a currency perspective, also Nepal is pretty unique. We've been pegged to the INR. The peg is about 25 years old, very stable, and that allows us to benefit from the stability of the INR. So that's one big benefit for investors. For Indian investors, practically you can say there's little or no risk. And even for global investors, you can use the INR as a proxy, you can create synthetic hedges, you get proxy hedges. And the Nepalese finance ministry and the central bank is also working on a hedging framework very quickly to bring out from a hedging perspective. So that kind of currency stability which Nepal offers, I think, for the economy of its size is pretty unique compared to other peer groups that we have. The other thing from a technical perspective, these economies normally come under pressure because of inflation. You know, that's a typical challenge a lot of these LDCs you know, face. In the case of Nepal, because we have access to India's supply chain, right? So about 70%, 68% of our CPI basket can theoretically come from India, you know, which is food, textiles, etc., which, you know, obviously we will be linked to the India inflation cycle. Out of the balance 32%, almost 18 to 20% sits within the government space, which is electricity, oil, utilities, and so forth. So we have a lot of resistance from inflation or hyperinflation of any kind. We almost have a hard constraint on inflation, which is India +1. So if you think of the economy which has strong currency stability and strong inflation measures, you're protected from any sort of, you know, sudden or force majeure or economic meltdown, as may be said. Nepal also is very strong on macroeconomic fundamentals. Typically in the World Economic Forum, when they do the reports for global measures, on the macro vector, Nepal is 32 out of 144, right? So we are healthier than most economies in South Asia on a macro level. So from a macro, overall sustainable basis, you are technically protected from the currency. You've got technical protection against inflation, and we've got very strong macro fundamentals. And you know, again, we've got 40, 50, 60 years of track record to show that we've been very stable as economy, never had any challenges. So the big 3 or 4 or 5 themes that I'd like to kind of summarize from what the speakers have shared. First of all, we've had a great track record, right? 30 years of great investments. We've heard some mind-boggling numbers, 1,500% dividends, $800,000 being transformed to $1.5 billion in, you know, 8-9 years. I mean, these are kind of numbers which are hard to believe, but they're backed by real data. And these are not exceptions. It's not that we've picked 1 or 2 investments from 20 or 30. These numbers can be applied to any investment. You pick any of the top 20, 30 investments, that's the number that's being shared. So clearly the track record speaks for itself, data speaks for itself. There is no doubt about the performance that Nepal has had. We heard straight from SCB, Unilever, some of the people on the dais, any myths about the environment are all myths, right? We've dispelled all those myths. It's a great environment, very, very easy, agile government, absolutely friendly, regulatory friendly, no challenges, no repatriation issues. So any confusion there is, I hope we can dispel, because these are investors who've been here 27 years, 33 years, absolutely no problem, right? So the track record, and from an environment perspective, we don't have any challenges. The strong consumption curve, right? So we talked about the demographics of the country. A large population, very young population, median age of 22. We've got great university graduates coming out, good human capital. So the access to human capital is very good. Niruk talked about the digitalization and how he sees digital as the next frontier that Nepal is accessing. And with digitalization, what access is going to improve dramatically, right? So those are some of the kind of main themes that's coming up from the demographic landscape. On the hydro space, Mr. Sharma shared that just by harnessing the hydro potential of Nepal, right, in the next 10, 15 years, just simple arithmetic is we'll grow our per capita 3 to 4 times. 3 to 4 times in 10 years, right? Now that's like 15, 17% per year growth just based on hydro. Now if you add tourism, you add agriculture, you add any of these sectors where Nepal has tremendous potential, I think the big challenge Nepal is going to have is the economy is just going to burn, it's going to overheat, right? So this is the time to enter. The economy is fundamentally sound. We've heard directly from the Honorable Prime Minister, we've heard from the great leaders of our country, really where we are headed. So from a leadership perspective, from an opportunity perspective, the growth is going to be very, very, very fast. I think one of the other themes that's coming across now is that, look, historically, we've had great success, great numbers, but probably the FDI has not been to the tune of what we'd like. This investment summit is coming after about a year where we had a stable government, all the fundamental factors are in place. The opportunity really is now, right? Some of these, when we look at these economies globally, whether it's Venezuela or Taiwan or all of these places, Vietnam, the time to get in was the right time. And, for Nepal, the time is now. Don't wait, don't look around. The speakers are here, experience is here, data is here, the government is open, we've got the investment board looking to interface directly with you. I think the time is to come in now, not wait anymore, fasten your seat belts, get on board, because, in 3 or 5 years, once people have come in, it's going to get harder, right? It'll get more competitive. So the time is to come in now. I think any challenges or any confusions, any discussions you have, there are people around here to answer. We've got the private sector here. One of the great learnings which, you may want to take away is, the experience shows that when you have a local partner, you're able to move much faster, you're able to have a much faster success. Just to share from a domestic investor standpoint, and I think Hariji referred to that, we are putting our money where our mouth is, right? So cement, we're investing more than $1 billion, $1.5 billion invested in cement in the last 3 or 4 years. Tourism, hotels is another $1.5 billion. Hydro is another $1.5 billion. So just in these 3 sectors, domestic investors currently, as we speak, have $5 billion of capital expenditure going on. $5 billion is not a small number by any sense. That's just domestic investors putting all our money in these sectors. So our confidence is high, and we'd like to encourage you guys to come on board, join the sort of movement that we have in Nepal, benefit from our kind of economic landscape, from our economic trajectory. And I think there's no better time than now, no better opportunity than now. That's the message I'd like to pass on here. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank our speakers. I'd like to first of all thank Mr. Chen, who's our keynote speaker, his positive vibe from ADB, what ADB is sharing and so forth. Mr. Rana, who talked about FNCCI, how FNCCI has been working to lobby with the government. They're talking to B2B with their various chambers, they're bringing investors, they're interfacing everybody. Ashish shared his story of Unilever and, very encouraging about how they're investing more, and they see Unilever being a long-term player in Nepal's economic growth. Dr. Moto, obviously, as usual, firebrand, he talked about, let's talk about the success. Let's not be afraid of competition. Let's not hide all those big balance sheet profit numbers and only talk about problems. Let's really talk about the successes, because that's data, that's reality, right? So I think it was great to hear from him. Nirukt, we got him on record saying, look, this is a great environment, absolutely corruption-free, fantastic regulators. So, we're going to hold him to that. And very encouraging to hear that he's brought in a number of investors, or Stan Chart's brought a number of investors here. And hopefully Stan Chart, being an ambassador of Nepal, will bring in that FDI investment. Mr. Nandlal Sharma talked about hydro and, 11,000 crores, and I think that's INR currency. That's $2 billion in one single project, right? So that's showing the kind of commitment and the belief that these companies have in Nepal. Hariji obviously, shared some great numbers, insights. He's a great researcher, a knowledge-based expert. So we've heard from everybody about the great stories of the country. And I hope you take away some positive messages out of this. So I'd like to thank all the speakers once again. And thank you for the audience for hearing us, letting us share our story. And we'll continue this discussion after the session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Anuj Agrawal as well for wonderfully moderating the session and I think asking all the hard questions as well. It was a wonderful session of very positive, insightful, exciting stories on investment in Nepal being shared. Many, many reasons in very big numbers on why you should come to Nepal and why you should come to Nepal right now, right away. We hope and believe that this session has motivated you to explore areas of investment and encouraged you enough to take those initial steps so that you will be in the same shoes like these distinguished gentlemen, distinguished personalities up on stage, so that in the next 5, 10, 15 years, you will also be able to share your stories of investing in Nepal. So we would now like to present a small token of appreciation to our distinguished personalities on stage, and to do the honors, I would like to invite Mr. Rajan Khanal, Secretary from Ministry of Finance. We would like to start with our special guest, Mr. Chen, Vice President, South Asia, Central and West Asia, Asian Development Bank. Mr. Chen, thank you so much for giving your special address and for those encouraging remarks. We'd also like to thank our moderator, Mr. Anuj Agrawal, Chairman of Nepal Infrastructure Bank, for fantastically wonderfully moderating the session of Investing in Nepal Experience Sharing. Mr. Hari Bhakta Sharma, President CNI. Also thank you to Ms. Bhavani Rana, President FNCCI. Heartfelt thank you to Mr. Nandalal Sharma, Chairman and MD of SJVN Limited. We would also like to thank and present a token of appreciation to Mr. Nirkut Sabru, CEO, Vietnam and ASEAN and South Asia Cluster Markets Standard Chartered Bank. We'd also like to thank Dr. Upendra Mahato, Founding President of NRNA. We'd also like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Ashish Rai, Managing Director, Unilever Nepal Limited. And so with this, we've come towards the end of the second plenary session, Investing in Nepal Experience Sharing. We'll end this session with a group photograph of all the distinguished personalities who are on stage. And I have some informal announcements for everybody who is here. I'd like to announce that we have a lost and found section in the Secretariat. So if in case you have misplaced anything, please do contact the lost and found. I think I was just informed about a pair of glasses that they had found. I'd also like to request all our delegates to kindly return the headset after each session. And also like to make an announcement that we have a stall out at the Rose Garden for Chandragiri cable car. So if any of you would like to visit Chandragiri tomorrow morning, please do register yourself at the Chandragiri cable car stall out at the Rose Garden so that the necessary logistic arrangements can be made for that. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We will see you after the lunch break, where we will have a discussion on international experience sharing. That will be the third plenary session. So ladies and gentlemen, please be back by 1:30.